I was in a pub in Dublin when an American ordered an Irish car bomb. The bartender, a man in his 60s, went pale and quietly told him, "We don't serve that here." It's not a drink. It's a memory. The American laughed and said, "Come on, lighten up. It's just a name. You Irish need to learn to take a joke about your own history." The entire pub went silent until the man and his friends left. I was working at a souvenir shop near the ancient ruins of Pompeii. An American tourist was looking at a book with photos of the famous plaster casts of the victims. He called me over and said with a serious expression, "You know, it's a real shame they didn't have modern building codes back then. If they had just installed a proper sprinkler system in the city, this whole tragedy could have been avoided." He seemed genuinely convinced that a few sprinklers could have stopped a pyroclastic flow from a volcano that buried the city under 20 feet of ash. While working at a research station in the Australian outback, I was explaining the unique ecosystem of the desert to a group of tourists. An American man decked out in brand new hiking gear kept shaking his head. Finally, he spoke up. "I think your information is outdated. I'm from Arizona and I know deserts. You don't have any cacti here, so it's not a real desert. And where are the coyotes and rattlesnakes? Every desert has those. You've got kangaroos and weird birds. It seems like you're misclassifying this whole area. It's more of a dry forest at best." He said it with the conviction of a man who thought all deserts worldwide were identical to his own backyard. I was in a pub in Edinburgh when an American tourist, upon learning I was Scottish, decided to educate me on my own history. "You know," he said sagely, "the man you call William Wallace, the Braveheart guy, he wasn't really fighting for freedom. He was just a terrorist disrupting the legitimate government of King Edward. If you look at it from the English perspective, which is the more objective one, he was the bad guy." He then took a long sip of his beer, looking very pleased with his unconventional historical take, which he had clearly just formed 5 minutes prior. A friend of mine in Iceland runs a Northern Lights tour. One night, the aurora was spectacular. An American tourist was filming it on her phone and then complained to my friend, "Can you make them stop moving so much and maybe make the green a bit brighter? I can't get a good picture." In the photos I saw online, they were much more vibrant and still. "You should really try to control them better for the tourists." She seemed to believe the aurora borealis was a man-made light show that could be adjusted for her convenience. I was at a coffee plantation in Colombia. The guide was explaining the process of handpicking the ripe coffee cherries. An American tourist interrupted, "That's incredibly inefficient. Why don't you just use a machine to shake the trees and collect all the beans at once? That's how we do it in the States. You're wasting so much time and manpower." The guide had to explain that this method ensures only the best beans are picked. While visiting a historic windmill in the Netherlands, an American engineer was explaining to the Dutch guide how it could be improved. He said, "If you just attached a modern turbine to the end of these blades and hooked it up to a generator, you could produce so much more electricity. It's a classic design, but the energy output is terrible. You're sitting on a green energy gold mine." My cousin is a cheesemaker in Gruyere, Switzerland. An American tourist on a tour of his facility tasted a piece of authentic aged Gruyere and made a face. "This is way too strong," he declared. "The Gruyere I buy at home is mild and has holes in it. This is some kind of imitation. You're mislabeling your cheese." My cousin patiently explained that the cheese the man was describing was American-made Swiss cheese, a completely different product. The tourist scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. Swiss cheese comes from Switzerland. You guys are just making it wrong here at the source." My friend is an Egyptologist who gives tours at the Karnak Temple complex. He was meticulously translating a cartouche. An American interrupted, "Sorry, but that's just the official story. I saw a documentary that explained what that really means." He pointed a finger at the ancient carving. "That bird isn't a bird. It's a depiction of a futuristic aircraft. And that ink symbol isn't life. It's a power source for their technology. It was all built by aliens. You guys are just sticking to the old script. But the truth is out there." He looked around at the group. expecting them to be enlightened by his revelation. I was on a boat tour of the Galapagos Islands with a certified naturalist guide who had a PhD in evolutionary biology. After a fascinating lecture on Darwin's finches, an American tourist raised his hand. "I think you're giving Darwin a little too much credit," he said. "My pastor explained it all to us. The finches' beaks didn't evolve. God just gave each of them the right tool for the job they needed to do. It's called intelligent design. It's a much simpler and more direct explanation. You should really include it in your tour to give people a balanced perspective." The biologist just stood there, opening and closing his mouth like a fish. I was working in a bakery in Paris. An American woman asked for a croissant, then watched me put it in a paper bag. "Whoa, stop," she said. "Aren't you going to warm it up and slice it for me?" I explained that in France, croissants are eaten as they are at room temperature. She sighed dramatically and said, "You're missing the best part. You're supposed to toast it with butter. You French people don't even know how to eat your own pastries correctly." An American exchange student was at a traditional braai barbecue in my backyard in Cape Town, South Africa. He watched my father expertly manage the wood fire for a few minutes before stepping in. "Sir, you're making this way too hard on yourself," he said. "You should get a gas grill. You just turn a knob and you get an even temperature. This whole wood thing is unpredictable and covers the meat in soot. In America, we've perfected the art of the barbecue. This is just primitive." My father, along with every other South African there, just shared a look that said, he has no idea what he's talking about. In a pub in Galway, Ireland, a group of local musicians were in the middle of a lively trad session. The music was fast, intricate, and brilliant. An American tourist who had been nursing a pint went up to the fiddle player between songs. "You guys are very talented," he began, "but you're playing it too fast. It's supposed to be slower, more melodic. My great-grandfather was from Ireland, and he taught me that Irish music is shown in slow. You're playing it like you're in a race. You're losing all the soul." The fiddle player just stared at him for a second, then winked at the bodhran player, and they launched into a reel that was twice as fast as the last one. I was working in a small family-run pasta shop in Bologna, Italy. We were selling fresh, handmade tagliatelle. An American woman came in and asked for fettuccine Alfredo. I politely explained that Alfredo is not a traditional dish from Bologna and we didn't have it. She looked at me with pity and said, "Oh, you poor thing. You work in a pasta shop and you don't even know the most famous Italian pasta dish. It's fettuccine with a cream and Parmesan sauce. It's a classic. My grandmother from New Jersey made it every Sunday. Maybe you should write that down so you can learn." She then walked out, shaking her head at my ignorance. My uncle is a master distiller at a small family-owned tequila distillery in Jalisco, Mexico. One day, a group of American college kids on spring break came for a tour. My uncle was passionately explaining the complex flavors of a 10-year-old añejo meant for sipping, like a fine cognac. One of the guys interrupted him, laughing. "Whoa, dude, stop. You're doing it all wrong. You don't talk about it. You just do it. You need a salt shaker and a lime wedge. You lick, you shoot, you suck. That's how you drink tequila. Come on, teach these people the right way to party." He then mimed taking a shot, much to my uncle's silent, pained dismay. During a tour of a Viking longship museum in Oslo, the Norwegian guide was explaining that the popular image of Vikings with horned helmets is a complete myth, an invention of a 19th century opera. An American man in the group laughed condescendingly. "Nice try, but we all know that's not true. Every movie, every book, every football team mascot shows them with horns. Are you saying all of them are wrong and you're the only one who's right? You've probably just lost the horned helmets. So you're displaying these plain ones and making up a story to cover for it. It's a classic historical cover-up." He then turned to his son and said, "See, don't believe everything they tell you." A friend of mine is a Maasai warrior who sometimes guides cultural tours in his village in Kenya. He was explaining the symbolic meaning of the different colors in their traditional beadwork. An American tourist interrupted him to say, "That's a nice story, but it's not very good color theory. Red and blue clash, and you're not following the seasonal color palettes. According to the fashion blogs I read, autumn is all about earth tones. You should incorporate more browns and muted oranges to be more modern and aesthetically pleasing." She was genuinely trying to give him fashion advice on his ancient cultural attire. I was working as a guide at a historical museum in Kyoto. We were standing in front of an authentic, beautifully preserved suit of 16th century samurai armor. I was explaining the practical design of the helmet when an American tourist wearing a bright orange anime t-shirt loudly cleared his throat. Excuse me, that's completely wrong," he announced. "The helmet should have way more spikes, and the faceplate is supposed to look like a demon. I've watched over 300 episodes of Blade of the Shogun, so I know what I'm talking about. You guys should really use the anime for reference to be more accurate." He then tried to show me a picture on his phone of a cartoon character as proof. While visiting a Buddhist temple in Thailand, I saw an American tourist approach a meditating monk. The tourist waited for the monk to open his eyes and then said, "Excuse me, I've been watching you, and your posture is a little off. I do a lot of yoga back in California, and my instructor says you need to keep your spine perfectly straight to align your chakras. You're slouching a bit. It's really going to block your energy flow." The monk, who had likely been meditating since before the tourist was born, simply smiled, nodded, and closed his eyes again. In a cafe in Vienna, I overheard an American telling his friends, "It's so weird that they call this Wiener Schnitzel. A wiener is a hot dog. They should call it Viennese fried pork or something so people know what it is. It's false advertising." A local at the next table leaned over and politely said, "Sir, Wiener means Viennese in German, as it is the specialty of our city, Vienne, and it is veal. Not pork." The American just waved his hand dismissively. "Whatever, they should still change the name to English so it's less confusing for tourists. It's just good business sense." An American tourist in a Japanese onsen, hot spring, was loudly telling his friend that the locals were doing it wrong. He said, "You're supposed to wear a swimsuit in a hot tub. It's just basic hygiene. Walking around naked is unsanitary." He was trying to enforce American swimming pool rules at a centuries-old Japanese bathing ritual. I was at a traditional tango club in Malanga in Buenos Aires. A local couple who were clearly professionals were dancing beautifully. An American woman who had been telling everyone she took ballroom classes in Michigan walked right onto the floor and stopped them mid-dance. She grabbed the Argentine man's arm and said, "Your frame is all wrong. You need to be rigid. Hold your arm up here. You're too loose and passionate. It's a technical dance, not an emotional one." The entire club went quiet. The dancer just looked at her, then at his partner, and without a word, led her back into a perfect, passionate dance, completely ignoring the woman. In a cafe in Amsterdam, an American was loudly complaining to the server about his stroopwafel. "This is stale," he insisted. "It's hard and crunchy. A waffle is supposed to be soft and fluffy, and you're supposed to put syrup and whipped cream on it, not this weird caramel stuff inside." The server tried to explain that it's a different kind of waffle meant to be placed over a hot drink to soften the caramel. The American just shook his head. "Look, I'm from the country that invented the waffle maker. I know what a waffle is, and this ain't it." I was a server at a high-end restaurant in Lyon, France, a city famous for its cuisine. An American couple ordered the coq au vin. When I brought it out, the husband looked at it with disgust. He called me over and said, "My wife makes an amazing coq au vin, and it looks nothing like this. Hers has a creamy white sauce and mushrooms from a can. This is all dark and smells like wine. You've clearly burned the sauce. You should have your chef visit the US to learn how to make this dish properly. We could give him my wife's recipe." I had to politely explain that he was describing a completely different dish, but he wasn't having it. I was on a guided hike in the Canadian Rockies. The guide, a man who had lived in the area his whole life, pointed out a grizzly bear's tracks. An American from the group immediately stepped forward, Now, hold on. You need to be careful what you call them. That's a brown bear. Grizzly is just a colloquial nickname. Scientifically, they're all brown bears. The guide patiently explained that while they are the same species, grizzly is the common and accepted name for the inland bears of North America. The tourist replied, well, in the U.S. national parks, the rangers tell us to call them brown bears to be more accurate. Your Canadian terminology is a bit behind.